See, one of the questions, it looks like Elizabeth is writing an answer, but Elizabeth, if you also just want to turn on your mic and say the answer for everyone too. We have a question from Layla. Is it possible for colleges to no longer make SAT and ACT a requirement in the future? Elizabeth, if you want to take that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully our presentation covered this towards the end, but it definitely is possible that some institutions may permanently go test optional. Like I mentioned, there's currently 1,400 colleges and universities that are already test optional through 2022. So that's a good number of institutions. I'll share the link for that fairtest.org in the chat as well, so you can go through and check and see if some of the schools you're thinking of applying to fall into that list. But if you are applying for a term that's beyond fall of 2022, or you see an institution you're applying to that's not on that list, contact the admission counselors directly at that school and find out what their plan is for test optional, because of course they'll have the best updates for you if they think that is something that's going to be permanent for their campus.
Thanks, Elizabeth. We also had a question in the chat, I believe, from Pilar, Pilar, correct me if I'm wrong, are you a teacher or a counselor at your school? I think you might be speaking on behalf of a student, asking about how we, either as students or teachers, can transmit to admissions representatives the context of a student's academics and what it's like to study at that school. And so it was brought up that the school profile is a good way to show that. I was wondering if someone can just talk a little bit more about if we have any counselors or teachers on today, what you look for in a school profile. There's many ways to make a school profile. If we have any Spanish educators who are logged on right now, we have a guide from Education USA Spain, completely in Spanish, that we can give you and kind of walk you through how to create a profile as well. But it would be great to hear from an admissions rep a bit more about what you're looking for when you're reviewing those kinds of documents. You are definitely on my CP. Still good information to know.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll kind of talk a little bit about that. Yeah, school profiles are helpful in certain things that they list. You know, obviously the curriculum that's offered at the school, kind of the averages as well, average scores, and so that kind of puts the students' scores in context of the overall school. Because you know definitely certain curriculums, certain curricula are there's some that are more rigorous than others, and then even within that there's certain schools that are more rigorous than others. So it's kind of helpful to know and puts the students' scores in context. Other things that are nice that you kind of see on most school profiles are the list of institutions where their students have been admitted, and so that's kind of helpful to see where students are applying. You can see where they're admitted and then where they end up matriculating to. So that's something else that's helpful. And then just like kind of a brief little bio about the school. So we like to know as much about the school as possible as we can, and then certainly contact information for if there's a counselor or if there's not a counselor, someone else at the school that we can be in contact with. And that's really important, especially if there's not a counselor, because we can go on school websites and contact a counselor. But I know some schools, they have, maybe it's a teacher that's doing that part-time, that's overseeing that part-time, or it's an administrator. But it's really helpful for us to know, who we can contact, because sometimes we do have questions in the middle of reading an application, and so the easier, the quicker we can find contact information for someone and get those questions cleared up, the better. So that's just kind of a little bit, why we like school profiles.
Thanks, Scott. We also have one last question from. Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I'm just going to put a plug there if there's any counselors out there listening to today's presentation regarding school profiles. So I'm actually the president of the International Association for College Admissions Counseling, which is the largest professional organization for college counseling for international students. There are sessions at our conference about building a school profile. So if anybody's really interested in becoming a member and joining our summer conference, which will be virtual this year, we'll have definitely a lot of information how you can build a school profile for your school.
Thank you. That's great information, Christopher. I actually, if you want to send that to us, we can post that in our counselor newsletter as well to get some more people involved. Another question from Pilar was, do you judge the English scores for international students differently as if they were nationals? I don't know if anyone wants to take that one.
Well, that's a good question. So for typically with students when they're educated in a curriculum outside of English, where English is not the medium level of instruction, the English proficiency test is really just used to determine if you meet our minimum English requirement. So when it comes to students in the US, we actually don't require those exams for like a TOEFL and IELTS for our domestic students because their medium language of instruction is in English. But if you are attending an English language school that is in English language, your TOEFL score or IELTS score may actually be waived. So that's why it's important to have like a school profile and provide us some context when you're applying to our school. So if you're talking about the SAT, again, we look at most universities will look at the context of your educational and your learning environment. Again, they'll look at the language of instruction. So they'll definitely view that differently in the sense that they're understanding that you're coming from that educational system opposed to somebody who's coming from an education system that is completely in English. So honestly, 600 is not a low score for the English. You're definitely welcome to retake the test if you want to, depending on the institution that you're applying for. Especially if you need financial aid and resources to apply to US universities and colleges, but we'll leave it up to you. Honestly, you're a competitive student. There's thousands of universities that will be happy to take your application and actually provide you an admission. So it's really up to you in terms of the institution that you do want to apply for. If you're looking for more selective institution, sure, go ahead and apply and do the SAT again, or whatever test you want to do again. But to be honest, again, a lot of really great options. Don't get stuck on the top 10 universities based on a ranking because it's really about finding the right fit for you. All universities in the US are good. We're all different. We offer something very unique. So just rest assured, if you are going to retake the test because you have a reach school, remember that you have access to US education already because there's a lot of institutions that'll be happy to take you as a student.
And I just want to touch back on Pilar's question, like how do we get to know if an institution is very tough compared to others when it comes to grading and stuff like that? We know like in some institutions, like literally the maximum grade would be given to a student would be 12 out of 20, which is probably a B in our system, in education system. So that's why school profile is very important. Maybe some institutions' school profile may not reflect that clearly, and we may not see it. So that's why I also answered in the chat there that you could literally send an email and voice that out and let us know, meet with us. We're happy to do a one-on-one meeting through Zooms, and we all offer that appointments flexibility with students. And definitely, just as my colleague Chris said, 600 in English is great for my institution. Before we were test optional, 480 was the minimum in English. If you have 480 or less, you would have to do some sort of ESL testing. Of 790 in math, that's definitely great score. The maximum is 800 in math, so be proud of those scores and share them because I believe they won't hurt you at all.
Just to echo what Christopher was saying too about searching beyond very high-ranking top 10 institutions. Pilar, if you or if anyone on the call today, your son or daughter, anyone needs help searching for schools, that's what we're here for. That's what we do. We'll have an individual advising appointment with you, hear your objectives and goals, the kind of experience you want in the US, and help you find and filter through all of those options because it can be kind of overwhelming. And to echo what Youssef was saying as well, even though we are always here to support you and help you at any stage through the process, contact the universities that you're interested in, show them that you're interested, ask them questions, research on the website first before asking questions to make sure it's not already on the website, but contact them and participate in any information sessions that they're doing, because that's where you're going to get the information specific to each university. So don't be shy to do that or afraid to do that. We have another question about doing a dual diploma program in Spain. I don't know if you're all familiar with dual diploma programs. And the student is asking if they do a dual diploma program, is that enough? Do they still need to submit an English proficiency exam? What if they have an official C1 level? This is something that I don't know if any of you want to speak about specifically for your institutions, but Lufia, usually for the dual diploma programs, a lot of Spanish high schools offer them, but it's kind of supplementary to your academics and you're not really taking classes fully in English for all 4 years of high school. So most universities, if they do provide any sort of waiver for an English exam, usually they're going to want to see that you're taking classes, all your classes in English for a substantial period of time, and most dual diploma programs in high school don't offer that, and high schools in Spain don't offer that. But I don't know if any institutions want to jump in.
Yeah, I'll say, speaking generally, it's going to depend on the institution. Some may waive it based on that, and some may not. And so, it's certainly something, contact the admissions person at the institutions you're interested in. Sometimes they'll work with you and say, okay, show me your scores, show me what you got in that, especially, maybe if they're really familiar with these kind of programs, but others may not. So, again, it depends.
That is the frustrating answer that we often give, is it depends on the university, but it really does depend on the university, which is why it's very important to start making your university lists as early as possible so you can start to familiarize yourself with requirements and get a better understanding of what is actually going to be asked of you when you apply. I see we're over time a bit, so I'm going to invite anyone who has an additional question to quickly put it in the chat or put it in the question and answer. If not, you have all of the representatives' contact information on this slide. Like I said, it will be on our YouTube channel probably next week as well, so you can refer to it. But we'll give it maybe like 1 more minute in case anyone has a question. Or if any of the reps have any other jewels of wisdom they want to share before we log off.
I was just going to add to the second part of the question about the C1 level as well. A lot of institutions do accept the CFR for admission, and they'll waive TOEFL, IELTS, or other English proficiency scores. So C1 is typically sufficient for most institutions if you show that certification.
Yeah, Liz, thanks. I meant to say for Pepperdine, we accept C1 level of 186 or above.
We have a question from a student in Luxembourg to get accepted into LIU if they need an SAT. Does anybody want to take that?
What is LIU?
Yeah, I'm not actually sure. I don't know.
I think it's Long Island University.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I want to ask if I needed a SAT test as an international student from Luxembourg to get. I might be wrong, but LIU, for me, it's LIU University, Long Island University. So I think a lot of universities, and Liz did share a list of the institutions that actually test optional or not. So you may just go to that. Yeah. So you may just go to that that list that we shared and actually look if LIU. I'm sure it is. It's there, and you won't need to share the SAT. But if you're considering a public institution on Long Island, so reach out to me.
Yes, all the information is always on the websites, and if it's not, that's when you get to bother the admissions reps. If you can't find the information, reach out to the admissions office if there's something specific. That being said, thank you so much to everyone who participated today, both reps and students and parents and teachers. We really appreciate your time and all the information that you shared. Thank you for your wonderful questions as well to all the participants. And yeah, feel free to reach out to Education USA in the future for any questions. Reach out to any of these representatives here. I'm sure they'd be happy to hear from you. Thank you so much for participating, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Amelia.
Thank you all. Thank you, Amelia. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Amelia.